orange alert being issued in relation to seismic activity, increased seismic activity in relation to the Kikum-Jenny volcano just off Grenada. Attorney General.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As you would have heard and no doubt received correspondence from the Seismic Research Unit in Trinidad, we've been advised of increased activity by the Kikum-Jenny volcano, which is, as you know, off the coast of Grenada. We thought it's important for us to have this press conference with you, just to update you in terms of what an orange alert means, because we don't want misinformation to go into the public. We certainly don't want a situation where the public is unduly agitated. So that's why I have with me Ms. Hines and Dr. Innes. We will issue a general statement in terms of what an orange alert means and give you the information in terms of what has been relayed to us. And both my colleagues stand ready, because there's these are the technicians to answer any questions you have in terms of the seismic activity. I'd like to begin by asking Kerry from the Department of Emergency Management's perspective to just issue a statement. I'll end by saying that we do have all of our departments who would respond to any eventualities on alert. We've had a meeting to assess our state of preparedness in the event that there's an eruption. So we are doing what we can from our end. Kerry?
Thank you all. The Seismic Research Center of the University of West Indies in Trinidad has notified the islands of Barbados, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Trinidad that we have been placed on an orange alert. Now, an orange alert means that there is highly elevated levels of seismic activity. This is as a result of the elevated levels of activity at the Kikum-Jenny submarine volcano, and this is located at 12 degrees north, 61 degrees west, or 8 kilometers north of Grenada. Earlier this morning, a strong continuous signal was observed on instruments monitoring the Kikum-Jenny submarine volcano. An eruption is possible within 24 hours. However, we would like to advise that persons remain vigilant and stay tuned to the local radio stations for updates. In addition, we would have prepared guidance notes for the maritime community, and we have issued a statement to them since they may be closest to the volcano. Since seismic has also indicated an exclusion zone for the shipping community. All shipping stays outside of what they have now called the first exclusion zone, which is 1.5 kilometers from the summit. And then they have further delineated a second exclusion zone where you're asking non-essential shipping to stay 5 kilometers clear of the summit. Now, we understand that the public is concerned, but we are advising persons to remain calm and vigilant and continue to listen to any updates that we will have on a frequent basis.
Yep. Thanks, Kerry. I'm going to ask Dr. Innes to make a few comments, because I know that over the last couple of days that we have seen some activity in Barbados, and I know there's an enhanced nervousness, shall we say, and Lorna is our foremost expert on these matters. there's been some concern about whether or not if there's an explosion that then it means is there a possible tsunami, etc. So that's why I asked Dr. Innes if she would join us, and I'm going to ask Lorna if she can lend us her expertise for a few moments and give us her perspective on what possibly could happen given the fact that there's an orange alert.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon to all. We have had increased seismic activity near to Barbados over the last few days, and I would not be surprised if it is linked to the increased seismic activity that is now being detected from the sensors that surround the dome of the Kikumjani volcano. I'd just like to remind you that there are two undersea volcanoes. Kikumjani is the larger of the two, but Jenny has a small brother named Jack, and Kikumjak is in the same general location, and of course both have eruption potential, seismic potential, but since the early 2000s, when we first had alerts regarding Kikumjani, they have been increasing the number of sensors that surround the undersea volcano to make sure that we would have as much real-time information on what is going on within the dome of the volcano as possible. And it is now those sensors that are detecting increased activity over the last 24 hours. There has also been set up an observatory that monitors the data and information that's coming from those sensors, and it's in the north of Grenada in an area called Sauteurs, and the observatory would be transmitting the data to the Seismic Research Center and to other stakeholders across the region to ensure that we have information as quickly as possible. I'd also like to remind you that 90% of the tsunamis around the world are caused by earthquakes, not volcanoes. And the other 10% would be triggered by volcanoes, by any movement, any major shift. It could even be a meteor that falls into the sea that causes the water to begin moving. At this stage, we are not under a tsunami alert of any kind. The orange alert, as mentioned, is purely because of the increased seismic activity and the possibility of an eruption. Just remember that we are dealing with probabilities, and so when we say that there's the possibility of an eruption, that Kikumjani will erupt, or that it will erupt within 24 hours either. These are all probabilities, and therefore over the next few hours, days, or weeks, as this orange alert remains, we want to be as vigilant as possible, because during that entire period, until the seismic activity returns to normal levels, there is the possibility of an eruption. Now, can the eruption cause a tsunami? Yes, but again, we're dealing with possibilities. And the dome of the volcano is in extremely deep water at this stage. As the dome grows, however, which it does over time, and it grows extremely slowly, over decades and centuries it grows. As it grows, it moves closer to the surface of the water. And the closer to the surface it comes, the greater the probability that when it erupts, you will have a tsunami. However, at this point in time, the dome is rather low. It's in extremely deep water, and therefore the possibility of a tsunami is low. It is not non-existent, but it is low. And I'd just like to also mention that in respect of coastal residents, because we anticipate that the seismic activity may continue as it did last week during this alert, that all of us will need to be vigilant. But I think it's also a good time to review the plan that we have as organizations, as households. We need to review what we would do if a particular event occurred. And coastal residents would need to be particularly vigilant because, like I said, the threat of a tsunami is not non-existent, but it is low. Thank you.
Does anyone have a question for either Ms. Hines or Dr. Innes?
In light of what you said, Dr. Lorna Innes, in terms of the residents being vigilant, and of course, everything is a probability right now. What are some of the things, though, that residents need to be aware of? I know you made the point about being very vigilant, particularly those living coastal residents. But what are some of the points or tips at this time you can give to residents, not just coastal, but across Barbados?
I would be more concerned at this point about seismic activity, and therefore we've had a lot of experience with seismic activity over the last week. The tremors, you want to ensure that you are in a place where you can be as safe as possible, under a heavy table, in a doorway, within a building that you trust the structure thereof, or in a completely open space away from electricity, telephone poles, buildings, as open a space as possible. Now that is if you feel a tremor. Evacuation is not necessarily indicated with seismic activity. However, if the seismic activity is strong enough, and and Barbados does receive a tsunami alert, then we will begin to move. We will begin to move away from the coast upward. And so at this point, the issue is more the seismic activity.
I was also going to make the point, though, that in Barbados we are more familiar with hurricanes, storms. This is all new for us in Barbados. I know you made the point as well that householders particularly and organizations need to look back at their plans. What are some of the, well, let me ask first, how swiftly are the organizations going to be relooking them? Because, as I said before, these are not issues that we are accustomed to in Barbados. How are you going about relooking your plans and going back to the drawing board and making us all feel safe?
Let me answer that on Lorna's behalf, because over the last couple of years, we have been emphasizing, and when I say we, the Department of Emergency Management, been emphasizing that this is just not about hurricane preparedness. It's about all hazards, and especially earthquakes and tsunamis, yes. So we had, early this year, we had our annual review in terms of our national state of preparedness. I believe that the BHTA also had their annual review a couple of weeks ago. So for us as practitioners, it's a continuous state of preparedness. You would have noticed, or should have noticed, that there have been more messages over the radio in terms of earthquake preparedness. That's as a result of our deliberations. So I don't believe that people have to go back to the drawing board. This is just a reminder from my perspective of the importance of being always prepared.
Can you clarify first again or expand on, only because there's been so much speculation over the last couple of hours about the connection between the recent quakes we had and this particular event? Do you want to clarify or expand on that?
I can't really expand on it. What I can say is that usually there are periods of high and low seismic activity, and they're usually concentrated around a particular area. What I said was that I would not be surprised if what we experienced last week is now linked to this increased seismic activity at Kikum-Jenny. There is no guarantee that it is, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is, because usually areas remember what seismic activity is. It's the movement of the tectonic plates relative to each other. And therefore, if you have tremors occurring in a particular zone, and when I say that a zone, I mean a very large zone, including Jamaica, Grenada and Barbados. The tremors last week were felt in Grenada as well, and they were felt in other islands around there. That is why my speculation is that it was connected in some way, that the movement of the plates, though small, were as a result of this particular seismic activity within the dome.
Despite what we say here at this press conference, there is going to be some level of panic among Barbadians. We've heard some reports. AG, you can probably confirm for us that the post office has been closed and people have gone home. We've seen people trying to get information, but we were able, the media was able to get the same press release that you would have read from the Seismic Research Center. First, can you say something to us that gives us some assurance that we can be safe, or that things are being done so that the average Barbadian can be safe in the event of a disaster of this nature?
Well, I thought that's why we're having this press conference, and indeed to update the public in terms of the information that is available to us, that from our perspective that there is no need to panic at this point in time. We have been down this road before, as I said earlier, that we in fact had an orange alert in 2001. We can only emphasize preparedness. We can only and continue to emphasize preparedness. As to whether or not the post office is closed, that is news to me. We spoke to the head of the civil service and advised him that we did not believe that there was any need for us to close offices, etc. Unfortunately, what happened in this case is that, and it's something that we're going to have to address in terms of information flow, because unfortunately, and I don't mean this in a negative way, that in fact that the Seismic Research Unit issued its advisory. It came to mainstream media, which then went to the public. So we're basically playing catch up in terms of this press conference, because as you very well know, once you go to the public and say orange alert, possible earthquake, etc., you're going to have this reactionary element that you have. And so, but there's not a lot that we can do about it. We can only do exactly what we are doing now. You have Launder's scholarship, you have Kerry's scholarship, and the fact, though, and the simple truth is that none of us can advise you 100% what's going to happen 24 hours from now. That's the plain reality. But what we can tell you is that based on the science and based on the information available to us, that we believe that there's no need for the public to panic at this point in time. We will, of course, keep in contact with the Seismic Research Unit in Trinidad. We will call you back again if necessary. We will certainly contact the media, because we need to depend on you to distill accurate information to the public.
The other thing is, when I checked the SRC's website, they had the orange alert, but when I checked the DM's website, the bar was registering no alert. So will there be something to speed up that information coming from the SRC or the DM to the public? Because we do know that the DM is our official means to disseminate information to the public. So is there going to be some
definitely
way to close that gap in terms of information coming to the media and to the public?
Definitely, yeah. That's a simple answer, definitely. Okay.
What are the criteria that would trigger a change in the level of alert? Because we're at orange right now, we would regress to a lower level or an increase. What would be triggering point, basically? Because you said that somehow you have to monitor it over the coming days.
I wouldn't want to get too technical, but basically it is to do with the level of seismic and volcanic activity, and they have levels of detection. So they have thresholds that they use for the different. It could go to red too, and of course that would trigger a completely different response and communication from us. But it could also go back to yellow or to green. So the science determines the threat level, what they are detecting from their instruments. Yeah.
Another follow-up, in terms of your updates, would it be based on then if there's a major change, or is it just an already update, or 2 hours, like what have a plan on that?
Just major change.
Major changes. Right now, it would be just vigilance, but if there's any major change, either down or up, we would communicate. Yeah.
What would be the response if it were to go to red?
What would be the response if it were to go to red? We have spoken to the mariners, for example, about the exclusion zones. My recommendation at that point would be to go even further, because it means that there will be an eruption. And the further away you are from the eruption, the better. And the coastal residents, again, you don't necessarily need to evacuate, but the warning will come once that occurs. And we don't want to confuse people at this time by talking about what will happen if it is red while it is orange. Because you know somebody's going to come in halfway through and hear on the radio that we're talking about a red alert and say it's moved to red. We don't want that.
What we can place to the public of Barbados and place to you is that we will be monitoring the situation very, very closely over the next 24 hours. And if the threat level changes, we will change the response as required. This is what this department does, and I have to say does very, very well. So you can take comfort in the fact that we will be paying very, very close attention to the level of seismic activity. We'll be paying very close attention to any further reports, and we will keep the public updated. There's really nothing else for us to do or say other than what we've said so far.
For those who are not clear, what are the repercussions if Kick and Jenny were to erupt? What would happen?
I'm smiling, Emmanuel, because I almost said it. You weren't at the press conference. You weren't and stuff, because that's exactly what we were discussing. Lorna, answer Emmanuel for me, please.
In a sentence, if you've seen what happened in Montserrat, just imagine it occurring underwater. And that's really what will happen. You will get an eruption of a volcano underwater. It moves slower in water than it would on land, but that's what will happen. There will be a volcanic eruption.
If there's any consolation, Emmanuel, based on what Dr. Innes said to me some time ago, given the level that the depth of the volcano is now, it will probably take another 50 years for it to reach the level where it is in eruption, that we will have a tsunami or significant event. So therefore, simply put, it's unlikely that you and I will be around when that happens, given the level of, given the depth of the volcano at this point in time. So we're not unduly concerned if there's an eruption, given where the volcano is now on the sea. It has to be a significant eruption.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the media, thank you very much.
Okay, that's a news conference given by General Adriel Brathwaite, the Acting Director of the Department of Emergency Management, Kerry Hines, and the expert Dr. Lorna Innes. The takeaways from this, of course, as we told you before, an orange alert has been issued by the Seismic Research Center and the authorities in the vast emergency management authorities in the Caribbean as a result of increased seismic activity in and around the Kikum Jenny, which is a submarine or underwater volcano off Grenada. What the Attorney General and the Acting Director of the DEM here are saying is that the orange alert means in theory, that an eruption is possible within 24 hours. But what they're also making clear is that because of the depth of the volcano, it is in very deep water, and it would take another 50 years before the volcano actually built to the level to be close enough to the surface, that even if there was an eruption, there will be a major event, a major tsunami. So what they're saying is that even though an eruption is possible, theoretically possible, within 24 hours, even if there were an eruption, because of the depth of the water, that a tsunami is very, very unlikely, and that no tsunami warning has been issued. And the Attorney General here says, of course, be alert, but there's no need to panic. From the Department of Emergency Management, Stetson Babstark on Network News.